Usually when we talk about immortality, there's this underlying expectation of triumph. Like it's treated as winning the ultimate biological lottery.
Right, exactly. The fountain of youth.
Yeah, you find the fountain of youth, your cellular senescence just halts, and you basically get to sit back and watch the centuries roll by in perfect health.
It is the ultimate human fantasy. We treat the concept of curing death as the final victory over our own biology. We just naturally assume that accumulating more life is, inherently a net positive.
But then you step into the world of ancient epics, and suddenly that fountain of youth is, well, it's heavily contaminated.
Very much so.
We're looking at a narrative landscape today that is genuinely terrifying. I want to welcome you to this custom-tailored deep dive, because today's source material is an absolutely fascinating script translated from Hindi.
Yeah, and it violently blurs the lines between ancient Indian mythology, documented historical accounts from the colonial era, and surprisingly, modern evolutionary biology.
Right. Our mission today is to explore the haunting legend of Ashwatthama. He's an ancient warrior who is cursed with a horrific form of immortality. We want to unravel how this single mythological figure bridges ancient epics with modern sightings. Okay, let's unpack this. Because before we can analyze the centuries of reported sightings, we really have to understand the specific crime that triggered this.
The dark origin.
Exactly. We are looking at the immediate aftermath of the Kurukshetra War in the Mahabharata epic. The Kauravas have lost.
And, defeat on that scale is always bloody. But what happens next fundamentally shatters the moral framework of the era. We have to establish who Ashwatthama was. He wasn't just some standard infantryman.
Right, he was the son of Guru Dronacharya.
Exactly. So he had this elite pedigree and access to the highest tier of ancient military technology. Specifically, he was a master of divine weapons, like the Brahmastra, which the texts describe as, well, basically a localized world-destroying force.
And he was fighting for the losing side. The war ends, but he flat out refuses to accept the surrender. So, under the cover of darkness, he infiltrates the victorious Pandavas' camp while they're asleep, and he just massacres Draupadi's 5 sons.
A total slaughter.
Yeah. Upamanyu, Sutasoma, Shutasena, Shatanika, and Shritakarma, all dead. And I don't just want to list historical names here. Let's look at what this actually represents. This wasn't just a strategic night raid, right?
No, not at all. It was an absolute demolition of Dharma. Dharma being the cosmic law of righteousness and the established codes of ancient warfare. You did not strike an enemy after sunset, and you certainly did not slaughter sleeping soldiers.
Let alone the unarmed lineage of the victors.
Exactly. It was an act of sheer, unrestrained vengeance. It moved him from a noble combatant to a war criminal in a single night.
And he didn't even stop there, which is just, it's awful. The texts indicate he deployed that ultimate apocalyptic weapon, the Brahmastra, with a highly specific and disturbing target.
The womb of Uttara.
Yes. He attempted to incinerate her unborn child to completely erase the Pandava genetic line from existence.
And that calculated malice, targeting the unborn, that is what forces the ultimate intervention. Lord Krishna, who is the divine strategist guiding the Pandavas, responds with a fury that is just absolute.
He doesn't just execute Ashwatthama, does he?
No. He essentially sentences him to an eternity of biological and psychological torture.
And the mechanics of this curse from Krishna are so meticulously detailed in the sources. Krishna starts by physically ripping this mystical gem, the Maneti, out of Ashwatthama's forehead.
Right, the source of his power.
Yeah, and from what I understand from the sources, this gem wasn't just decorative. It functioned almost like a biological shield, granting him fearlessness and invincibility against diseases or weapons. So by extracting it, Krishna leaves this deep, gaping neural and physical wound.
And then comes the actual sentence. He is condemned to wander desolate places for 3,000 years.
3,000 years.
But the parameters of this wandering are what make it horrifying. His body will perpetually exude this foul, necrotic odor. He will suffer from a cascade of incurable diseases.
And the most brutal part, I think, is that no one is allowed to interact with him. No one will offer him shelter. No one will even speak to him.
Total isolation.
Yeah. And that wound on his forehead where the gem was extracted, it is cursed to never heal. It will remain a weeping, open crack in his skull forever. And while his body is failing and rotting, though he will constantly beg for death, it will continually elude him. Death is biologically prohibited.
What's fascinating here is how the text, drawing from the Bhagavata Purana, specifically constructs this justice. It is entirely devoid of physical relief, yes, but it is primarily designed for total social and psychological annihilation.
It's basically supernatural solitary confinement. Like in most stories, immortality is the ultimate prize. But here it is explicitly weaponized as the ultimate torture. His internal engine is running at 10,000 RPMs forever, burning up, but the transmission is permanently disconnected.
That is a great way to put it.
He can never fully crash, but he can never stop overheating. You are kept alive solely to experience the necrosis of your own tissue.
It completely strips away any romanticized notion of eternal life. To be denied a single human connection, to be instinctively repulsive to everyone you encounter, and to wear the bleeding evidence of your greatest war crime on your face for millennia.
But, texts are just texts.
Yeah.
We could easily sit here and say, oh, well, this is simply a philosophical allegory for post-traumatic stress or the isolating guilt of committing war crimes.
Which makes perfect logical sense.
It does, right up until you start looking at the eerie trail of centuries of sightings. Because if this was just a myth, why do people keep bumping into him across different centuries and geographies? Why are British bureaucrats and modern doctors treating him as a literal physical patient?
Yeah, that is the fracture point in the narrative. The mythology bleeds directly into historical realities. The geographic spread of these encounters makes them incredibly difficult to just casually dismiss.
Let's pull from the sources regarding the 19th century records in Rajasthan. It's a dark night, and a physician is working late in an old remote shop. A strange, silent creature steps out of the dark.
Doesn't speak a word.
Not a single word. The physician notes the man has a severe, unhealing crater in his forehead. The stranger simply asks for an astringent or ointment, takes it, and vanishes into the night. And the physician actually documents the encounter, concluding with the note, he was not human.
Wow. Just a solitary medical professional attempting to make sense of an anatomical impossibility. But the colonial records offer an even more structured account.
Yes, during the British era in Madhya Pradesh, we have an official diary entry from a British administrator near the Narmada River in Burhanpur. And I have to assume British colonial officials of that era were aggressively pragmatic.
Oh, absolutely. Deeply empirical.
Right. They were concerned with tax collection and land surveys. They aren't exactly known for peppering their official state diaries with local ghost stories.
Bureaucracies don't tolerate magical realism in their ledgers. If an official wrote it down, it was because it represented a tangible disruption to their reality.
Exactly.
So this official documents meeting a bizarre, unnervingly tall sadhu, a holy man, described as being nearly 7 feet tall. He has a deep, oozing red wound on his head. And the man doesn't ask for money or food. He exclusively asks for specific medicinal herbs.
Right.
The official tries to pursue him, but the giant man effortlessly vanishes into the dense jungle canopy.
Notice the variables crystallizing here. The extreme height, the singular focus on botanical medicine over basic sustenance, and the isolating behavior, actively evading any prolonged engagement.
And we see that same pattern repeated in a more modern context in the Arab Valley Hills in Rajasthan. A senior forest official on night patrol spots a massive figure in the dark. The man is muttering what sounds like ancient Sanskrit, and he possesses a fresh forehead wound.
And then the flashlight.
Yeah, the ranger shines his high-powered torch on the figure, and the source claims the man dissolved like smoke. An instinctual reaction from the ranger met with an impossible physical escape.
Now, let me just play devil's advocate for a second here. I want to ask you and, everyone listening. A forest ranger sees a towering guy in the pitch black of the woods muttering to himself. Are we just looking at generations of mass delusion fueled by cultural lore?
Yeah.
I mean, isn't it human nature to project a famous ghost story onto any weird encounter in the woods?
It's a very fair scientific challenge. Pareidolia and cultural conditioning are incredibly powerful forces, but you have to account for the synchronized specificity of the details across hundreds of years.
Right.
The language spoken isn't a local dialect, it's archaic Sanskrit. The injury isn't just some random laceration, it's a specific crack localized to the center of the forehead. If this is a mass delusion, it operates with a clinical consistency that totally defies normal sociological drift. Could a historical anomaly have actually survived and sparked these consistent sightings?
And that clinical consistency hits a wall when traditional medicine actually gets a close look at it in the 20th century. In Gujarat, in the Saurashtra region, an Ayurvedic doctor has an encounter in his clinic.
Oh, right. This one is fascinating.
He treats a patient with an extraordinary wound, that exact forehead wound. But the doctor notes something medically impossible. There is no blood flow. There is no swelling. It is simply a deep, dry crack in the cranium.
And what does the patient say?
When questioned, the patient casually states the wound is thousands of years old. The doctor provides treatment, the patient departs, and the doctor is just left paralyzed by the realization of what he just saw.
It reads like a localized case of a vascular necrosis, but one that is somehow biologically suspended. And we also have to factor in the architectural anomalies mentioned in the text, specifically the Azargar Fort in Uttar Pradesh.
Oh, the Shiva temple. This is where the physical evidence shifts from medical to environmental. Inside this fort, there is a locked temple. The generational belief is that every single morning before sunrise, fresh flowers mysteriously materialize on the deity as an offering.
Despite the heavy doors remaining locked.
Exactly. Priests physically stand guard outside throughout the night, yet the offering appears. The local consensus is that Ashwatthama continues his ancient worship there every single day.
So we're looking at this huge chronological spectrum. A 19th century physician, a British official, a modern forest ranger, an Ayurvedic doctor, and a continuous environmental anomaly at a locked temple.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Because having discussed the mythological texts and the real-world sightings, we have to move to the modern lens. Could ancient lore actually be cloaking advanced scientific realities? The sources don't just lean on theology. They actually bring modern biology into the discussion.
Which is a necessary friction, because modern science insists that immortality for a complex organism like a human is just impossible. The biological clock is a one-way street.
But the sources point out that studies show lengthening telomeres can drastically slow aging.
Right, telomeres. We used to think of aging as unavoidable wear and tear, but we now know it's deeply tied to these structures at the ends of our chromosomes.
And the text introduces tardigrades into the argument to prove that extreme biological suspension already exists in nature.
Water bears, yeah.
Exactly. These microscopic organisms can survive for thousands of years under extraordinary extreme conditions. When subjected to lethal environments, they basically halt their biology to survive for millennia.
They completely redefine the absolute boundaries of biological endurance.
So consider this analogy. What if the ancient sages who documented these epics were basically like modern geneticists, but they lacked the scientific lexicon to describe what they were seeing? If tardigrades can halt their biology, perhaps ancient texts were describing a forced biological anomaly using the vocabulary of curses and magic.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, human history frequently translates misunderstood science or extraordinary biological phenomena into the language of theology and myth.
And we have to ask, is this entire text just fiction? Because archaeologists and researchers don't view the Mahabharata purely as a fantasy. The sources cite that NASA has even acknowledged that specific astronomical events described in the epic actually occurred.
Right, specific solar eclipses.
Yeah, they historically occurred during that exact period. The implication of that is staggering. If the Mahabharata has historical truth, could Krishna's curse and Ashwatthama's continued existence also hold some terrifying truth?
It forces a deeply uncomfortable hypothesis that either a profound understanding of genetics was lost to time or it was brutally applied to permanently quarantine this one individual.
So let's move from the biological possibility of survival to the psychological reality of such an existence. What does it actually mean to live this way?
It requires completely dismantling the romanticized view we hold of eternal life.
Imagine your own biology turning against you like this, revisiting the reality of his existence. This is a man who desperately wants to die but cannot. A man who yearns for a single conversation, but no one will stop for him.
He is a silent witness to the rise and fall of countless civilizations over millennia.
And the ultimate irony, which the text emphasizes, is the sheer volume of his intellect. He possesses supreme ancient knowledge. He knows the Vedas, the divine weapons, and the deepest secrets of Dharma and Adharma, righteousness and sin.
But he is cursed to be entirely unable to speak of them or teach them to humanity.
Imagine being a walking library of humanity's greatest secrets, entirely cut off from humanity itself.
It brings the emotional weight home. It emphasizes that immortality here is not a divine boon, but the heaviest penalty imaginable. It really forces you to reconsider your own desires for eternal life. If eternal life means existing as a perpetual outsider, unable to contribute or share a single thought, it ceases to be life.
It's just a pulse. A 3,000-year sentence of existing without living, which brings this entire ancient legend directly to you listening to this right now. I want you to consider your own surroundings. Have you or has anyone in your community ever had an eerie encounter in the deep woods or remote villages that mirrors this legend?
Those fragmented stories still circulate, you know? The wild places still hold anomalies we cannot neatly categorize.
The sources make one thing abundantly clear. As long as the mystery remains unsolved, the legend of Ashwatthama wandering in the dark continues. So, what does this all mean?
Well, it leaves us with a chilling, unexplored thought based on our deep dive today. If a being truly possessed all the knowledge of ancient Dharma and lived to witness thousands of years of human history, including our modern wars and cruelties, perhaps his absolute silence isn't just a divine curse anymore.
What do you mean?
Perhaps, after watching humanity obsessively repeat the exact same horrific mistakes he made thousands of years ago, his silence is a choice born of utter despair.
Wow. Just waiting in the shadows to see if we will ever finally learn the lesson.